Was it Eisenhower, right, who warned about the
military-industrial complex and the technological elites.
So what are the things that drive you crazy? Certainly enough of them out there. There are times I just feel like I was, traveling through the cosmos with God. And through lack of patience, I just asked him to let me off on the first planet with indoor plumbing. And I wound up here. 9/11 has always been one of my themes. It's one of the things that spurred me to get hardcore back into activism. And it's just hard to see people believe the lies that they believe. I mean, it isn't just 9/11, of course, that is the biggest and one of the most obvious, but we can go through a whole itinerary of false flags where the things they tell us just don't make any sense at all. And yet we swallow them and then we go on about our daily lives as if this is normal. Like, we're supposed to be lied to and murdered and enslaved and, gee, there's nothing we can do about it, And then we wonder why the powers that be treat us as if we're idiots. Currently reading The Trigger by, David Icke. Right? It's a little extensive into 9/11 because he feels like I do that it is the trigger. It's a linchpin. It's, and even one of the things that Trump said during his campaign was, you elect me president and you will find out who really brought down the Twin Towers. Yeah, still waiting. Anyway, I do what I can out there to try to, enlighten. And there's always a question, where is the critical mass? Because there's always a critical mass when it gets to a certain amount of people that know the truth that things start happening. And at times I think we've reached the critical mass, and other times I think, well, maybe we haven't. And then there's other times that, well, maybe we have, but nobody's doing anything about it. Maybe that rock is not being pushed. It's not being moved. I mean, even though people know, we were lied to. Yeah, 3,000 people got murdered. Yeah, we went to war and killed another 1.5 million, 2 million people. We're still fighting useless wars and people are still dying over a lie. But how's my 401k doing? It's just, it's exasperating. But this starts out with a couple from New York and their experience and belief in 9/11. You can see with them how they, there's questions there, but they don't want to breach it. They want to go into that realm. It's there, they'll put it on the shelf, but, it's not going to affect them. Yet it is affecting us. And then the second one is a pilot for American Airlines, which through my fault, I only got half of this conversation because I didn't turn on the microphone. And And lastly, there's a couple of structural engineers who, again, you see, well, they have questions about 9/11, but there was something, this is like voice in the back of the head telling them there's something wrong, but what are they going to do about it? I mean, knowledge without action doesn't mean anything. I'm doing what I can with the action, with my talents or what I've got. And if you want to do something, then do something of your own. And if you can't do anything your own, well, then help me out with what I'm doing. I have my 9/11 design at my shop, and the shop button on my website is working. So if you just don't want to click in the description to go to my shop, you can go to my website and you click the shop button and it'll take you to it, which is primarily the only reason I have that website. So if you would, that'd be nice. That's one way to spread this word and hopefully reach that critical mass for all it's worth, for what it's worth. At any rate, you know what to do. If you like it, you like it. If you care, you share. If you can contribute. And I'll see you on the other side.
Now you can't even get. It's just drop off. Goodbye.
Well, which is stupid to me, because I mean, if you're a terrorist, you can just blow yourself up when you're in the line.
Yeah.
I mean, what this is. Besides, the whole thing was false to begin with.
Oh, the bulletproof vest one.
I mean, 19 hijackers didn't bring down those buildings. Stupid.
Actually, I have a friend that was a fire marshal and a what do you call it? What they explained was a lot of fuel. The buildings, they say, it was pure dumb luck. The dumbest scenario is my dad worked in that building. He actually had an office in there. When they built the building, it was exoskeleton. They explained, I was there, but they built this kind of truss, angle iron. They ran truss across. They gave an acre in the building, open. When the building heated up,
not buying it.
So what happens is when the building heats up, the truss that was supported the floors simply busted and they pancake.
Not buying it.
That's why, usually, because people say, well, explosives.
Not buying it.
When you blow a building, when they pop, you see it. I've been to a lot of explode buildings. They go. This went from top to bottom. Boom, boom. They go from bottom to top. They don't go from top to bottom.
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
The only building I could say is the number 7 building. Didn't make sense. But the rest of the buildings were just perfect.
No. There were 47 steel beams in the center of those buildings that are as thick as your body. Yes, there were.
That building is like a big square.
No.
No.
I'm telling you, I know this. I'll tell you. There's a group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I happened to meet one of the originators out here. It's over 3,000 architects and engineers that have studied the collapse of those buildings, that have signed their names, reputation, put their lives on the line, that say those buildings came down by controlled demolition. There are... well, who benefited? Who benefited from that crime? It wasn't us. It wasn't the Muslims.
No.
Who benefited?
Probably the government, if anything. But I'm not even
the national security state and the military-industrial complex. What were they talking about at the time? A peace dividend. We're a war economy. We need enemies. If you look at this right here, there were 118 firemen that testified to...
Well, I was saying, I know that no building has ever collapsed when a neighboring building burning. That I do know.
There was no need for the
118 firemen testified to explosives going off all around them.
Wow.
Now, NIST, whose job it is, I mean, if a building fell down, if that building collapsed right now, They had a building collapse here a couple of months ago, right? NIST comes in and has to do a test for explosives. It's in the MO. It's part of what they have to do. No matter what else happens, they have to do tests for explosives. There was not one single test for explosives done on these buildings. Why? With 118 firemen testifying to explosives going off all around them, with building number 7 collapsing into its own footprint without anything hitting it.
Yeah.
Why weren't any tests for explosives done?
And it was, have you been to New York?
Yeah.
And it was, you know how close.
No, but number 7 wasn't close.
No.
No, it's not from here to that brick building.
It's close.
It's far to that, yeah,
I know
he's
it's
right.
close, but not quite close.
It's not close at all. I grew up in
Not
those
quite
buildings.
Close. I know what you mean.
I grew up in
Still.
those buildings, so I
But
know.
there was no need for it to come down anyway. There was no reason.
No. That building number 7 housed all 16 of our intelligence agencies and the mayor's emergency bunker. That thing was a fortress.
Yeah,
You could shoot a howitzer from here into that building and you wouldn't crack a window. And at 5:20 in the
I was gonna say at
afternoon,
5 o'clock
it did
came
this
down. Yeah, it came
in
down.
6 seconds.
Yeah.
Perfect controlled demolition.
Yeah.
Because
I saw the first.
She saw the
building
first plane
hit.
hit.
I still have it in my.
And then basic physics says this. Even if you were to take into account what you said, right? Basic physics says this. Without the 47 steel beams in the center. This much of the building, right?
Yeah.
Now, basic physics, high school physics says force equals opposite reaction force. Okay. As this collapses, it's going to hit here. This is going to get destroyed. As it hits, it gets destroyed. As it hits, it gets destroyed. So as it collapses, it's not a solid piece of steel.
No.
As it's falling, it's being destroyed. So as it hits down here, which these beams get thicker as it goes down.
Right.
So it's getting stronger down here. This is getting weaker. It would eventually just stop right here. Yet this building collapsed in free fall all the way into the basement. So and then there were 3 pools of molten metal under all 3 of those buildings that burned for 2.5 months. Where'd that molten metal come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nanothermite was found in the debris. Nanothermite is a high-grade military explosive. It's soluble in liquid. Maintenance men could be painting on the walls. They wouldn't know it. They estimated that there was as much as 10 tons of nanothermite in those buildings.
Wow.
You know the buildings were empty, right?
Yes, that's another thing. They were empty.
Empty buildings.
So,
We're like fill up. If you took everybody and put them in one building, you still couldn't fill up.
I know.
Empty
Well, good
building.
thing your father was retired.
Oh, he was retired by then, but it was always empty.
Those buildings came down by controlled demolition. Period.
All right, man. Well,
Terrible. Straight talking.
we'll never find out in the end, but
Oh, one of the things that he said when he was running, and this is what made me go, what? He goes, and this is a quote, "You elect me president, you will find out who really brought down the Twin Towers," unquote.
that could be a little too dangerous.
Dangerous for him. The thing is, the good
What's
thing
more
is that
dangerous is to let him get away with it.
he has no problem telling it how it is. So that's good.
No. That's why they're angry at him.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Check out that information I gave you.
Check it out. Thank you very
much.
Gotta go this way.
Al-Qaeda.
How did they
ISIS.
benefit?
How?
They got
Just
destroyed.
from, in the short term, they benefited from maybe being able to recruit more people to their cause.
But we invented Al-Qaeda. We are the ones that started. I mean,
The Taliban.
well, you remember? All right, here's it. Who benefited from from 9/11? The military-industrial complex and the national security state exploded. You remember at that time we were under what was called a peace dividend. Oh, we have peace now. The Berlin Wall had fallen, and we would like, oh my God, we got peace now, right? Well, we're a war economy. We need enemies.
But that would imply that the government was behind this.
The government is a monolithic thing. Elements within the government can be corrupt.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
So we have, like, well, I'll take, let's just bring up a couple of examples. The CIA has lied to us how many times?
Probably more than.
Thank you. Where were they? Where were the weapons of mass destruction? They didn't exist. Yet we went to war, and how many millions of people died over a lie? Vietnam started over a lie.
Iraq did have some, but not to the extent that.
Well, not to extent to go to war. I mean, you're right. I mean, they didn't find the weapons of mass destruction. The FBI was started by whom? A cross-dressing gay man who was an authoritarian. Yeah, thank you. And it hasn't improved much at all. I mean, out of 152 questionable shootings by the FBI, they've been found innocent in all 152.
Of course.
What are the odds? So you understand there are elements within our government that become agencies unto themselves. You've heard of the deep state, a shadow government. These things exist. It's what actually runs things. So they are the ones that actually in cahoots, because those are the ones that cahoots with the corporations who make money off of war. And control is their main method. And so in order to keep us under the control, they keep us in fear. It's always the best way to keep us in fear. Fly a few planes into some buildings and then blame it on someone else. I beg you to look into that. Look into those guys.
I will check this out.
Yeah.
Was it Eisenhower, right, who warned about the
military-industrial complex and the technological elites?
Yes, sir. I'll look into this.
It's all about money.
Yeah. Money and power. Money and power. Stay safe up there, brother.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
What do you do up there in Chicago?
I'm a structural engineer. Design bridges, inspect bridges and stuff. And then stuff. I also inspect stuff for the military, for the Navy.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Interesting. As a structural guy, you inspect bridges and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
The National Institute, NIST, right? Whose job it is when something collapses is to go in and inspect. Do you do anything with them, or?
Not with them. We've done some stuff with the National Transportation Safety Board. You know, when they have. So I'm also a diver. So we do a lot of mine inspection work is underwater and that. So, but most of your bridges fail because of something underwater. So we've been called in on times to help the Transportation Safety Board, evaluate, why a bridge collapsed.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm just going off of layman and what I've looked into. But let's say if a bridge collapses or something, a building collapses, it's normal procedure to also inspect for explosives. Is that?
I mean, depending on how the bridge failed. I mean, that could be a possibility if somebody sabotaged it.
Right.
Yeah.
There were no tests whatsoever done for explosives on 9/11. None. And yet, 118 firemen testified to explosions going off all around them that day. And there are pictures, of course, of splivs coming out of the buildings and, seismic, readings showing that there were explosions. Yet NIST did not perform one single test for explosives that day.
I hadn't heard about that, but I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about some of that, beyond.
Yeah,
beyond
all
just the
kinds of theories that.
Well, I actually I actually got to meet one of the architects. There's over 3,000 architects and engineers for, it's called A&E for 9/11 Truth. Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth that have studied the collapse of the 9/11 buildings, and they've signed their names to a petition saying those buildings came down by controlled demolition.
Yeah, I have to do a better job of reading them. I had several extensive reports from American Society of Civil Engineers, which I'm a member of. But, yeah, I know there's all kinds of theories related to the building collapses.
Yeah, well, that's why I like talking to professionals like yourselves when I run into them, because I mean, you know, you can go to these guys.
Come here real quick.
And they speak your language. I mean, these guys speak your language, so you can go and look and see what they're saying, and you know, then you'll form your own opinion. But from a layperson myself, I'm looking at it. A lot of this is just basic physics. I don't need a degree in engineering to understand that, you know, steel melts at a certain temperature and stress points and things like that, where the physics don't add up, where those buildings would just collapse like they did without help.
I will say, and again, I'm not making any judgment, but when I was up in the state of Washington, you know, when that happened, and I was getting the details, and then when I saw, and then somebody told me from my office about how it collapsed, it did seem a little bit unusual because all the damage and everything going on was up at the top there, but then for it all,
the collapse was,
I guess all that up there could take the rest of it down, but it seemed...
Well, that doesn't even, I mean, as a layperson, it doesn't make sense to me, because just in lay physics, basic physics, force equals opposite force. This portion right here, as it's falling, is going to disintegrate as it hits the structure here. So it would eventually either just fall off to the side, or, you know, it wouldn't just... But it's not a solid steel thing that's going to boom, you know, collapse right into the basement. So it just does it. And then they found 3 pools of molten metal that burned for 2.5 months under all 3 of these buildings. And nothing explains the collapse of building number 7, which is the World Trade Center building number 7, which was the 3rd building to fall. Nothing hit it. And it was from the trade tower, from the World Trade Tower, the Twin Towers, from here to that brick building down there. It was 47 stories tall, housed all 16 of our intelligence agencies, and the mayor's emergency bunker was a fortress, and it did this in 6 seconds. At 5:20 in the afternoon. What made it collapse? I mean, there's so many anomalies about that day, things that don't make sense. And so I don't know, you guys are the pros, you know, you go listen to the architects and engineers and see what happens.
Can you grasp the frustration? I don't know, where do you go? What does it take? What does it take? The truth. Keep on living the lie. All right. Thanks for stopping by. Again, if you can help me out, do that. Pray for me, I'll pray for you. See you on the streets.